Hi there.
Hi, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Can everyone else hear me? Hello? Okay, let me make the chat enabled. Sorry, do bear with me. This is my first time doing this. So I'm just learning this on the go as well. Give me one
No.
second, please. Yeah. Yeah. So I've enabled it so that everybody can talk in the chat. And if everyone can hear me, I'll start this now as well. So good morning. My name is Shibomi. I'm going to be taking this webinar session on Xero integration and I'm also who should be using it. I'm a finance and client success associate at Arthur, and I hope the webinar goes well. This will be my first webinar, so I hope that you guys enjoy it and find it useful as well. So let me just start the slideshow. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I hope you can't tell too much that I'm ready. Perfect. Okay, cool. So, and can everyone see my screen as well? You can answer in the chat. You can just unmute yourself and say yes as well. I'm happy with either.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so so this is the first page, then we'll go on to that now. And this is just a copyright notice, just so information we have is meant to be is private and confidential. And yeah, so just don't share it with any of our competitors, please. And so so the agenda for today, like I said, this session is about the Xero integration and who can use it. So I'm just going to take you through a few things about Xero and integration itself. So I'm going to start with what Xero is and also what the Xero integration is and also how that works. I'll get into a bit as well with Arthur's relationship with Xero as well, just to explain how the two softwares can actually interact and how the whole integration process works. I'll also explain a bit in terms of who can use it, but not to give away any spoilers. Pretty much anyone can use it, but I'll go into a bit more detail about that. And at the end of the session as well, I'll just explain what the mapping to Xero Pro process is, and I'll give an example of how to reconcile using Xero and give some space for any questions and answers. Does that sound fine?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. And so yeah, so the first thing I'll start with would be the Xero integration. So what is Xero and what the integration is as well. And so I think a good way to start with this is to really understand what the two different softwares are. And just so and as it shows on the screen, Xero is a simple to use accounting package with an automated bank feed. Xero is the software to use to manage your accounting. You can also manage your filings as well from Xero, and you can reconcile any payments against many invoices in Xero. And so with Arthur being a property management platform, we've actually integrated with Xero, just so that all your charges and all your fees can actually then be can actually then be pushed to Xero, reconciled on that platform, and also have receipts created in Xero and go back into Arthur as well. So it really is just a way for us to use two best-in-class systems that are great at what they do to then help you, the user, make them the best out of both systems as well. And the recent integration that works so well is simply because Xero as a default, it basically allows you to reconcile charges to payments, but then once integrated with Arthur, those invoices they now become the charges and the fees you actually make in Arthur, and Xero is able to recognize this just so that you can now understand the way that you're managing your rent accounting and things of that nature in Xero as well. Have I explained that? Have I explained that well enough? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so with that said, the next slide. On. So the next slide, it will just be kind of discussing then Arthur's relationship with Xero. And so the way this works is that is that when things are when we are doing integration, you generally be integrating either into an existing Xero account. So let's say yourself, let's say if you had a Xero account which you're using for your general business needs, you would then integrate that account into your Arthur account. Or otherwise, if you don't have a Xero account, we we would then open one for you and also then manage the subscription as part of your Arthur package, and then integrate your Arthur account into a clean Xero chart of accounts. This basically just means that the Xero would a clean Xero is just basically a blank Xero account, but in terms of configuration, they are configured the same way. The only real difference is that with the existing integration, essentially all the settings that are already in Xero, we will kind of just look at them, make sure that make sure that the chart of accounts can actually correlate with what we have in Arthur, and make sure any other information which we call tracking categories, but in plain English, that's basically things like a property address, a unit address, and also any sort of contact information such as a landlord's name, a tenant's name. If that is already within your Xero account, we just make sure that that information is correct, and make sure it's then integrated into Arthur without any problems. And so once that's done, the way that the two systems work and interact is that Arthur is the invoice generator. So that means that any invoices, any charges, whether it's tenant rent, whether it's a management fee to the landlord, whether it's a contractor charge as well, those are all generated in Arthur. Once integrated, then whenever you run a sync, that then invoice and charge would then be posted to Xero. The Xero is where your bank feed connects to, and also where you thus reconcile the payments and charges as well. So once a charge has been posted to Xero, you can then reconcile that in Xero against the bank feed payment. I'll show you an example of that in a second as well. And then once those payments have been reconciled, a receipt is made in Xero, which is then sent back to Arthur to actually then show that this payment has now been reconciled and it is no longer an issue to worry about. You then have the receipt in Arthur as proof of that. And I can show you what that looks like in a second. Am I following? Is everyone following so far? And I know that I said that there's space for questions and answers at the end, but I do personally feel that I don't want to like lose you and have you kind of come back to a question later on. So if there's any questions you want to ask based on what I've just said now, or even anything previous, I think is a good time to ask those questions before I go to start showing any examples. So does anyone have any questions, or is there anything that you'd like me to explain better or differently? Any questions before I go on?
No, not for me.
Okay, so I'll go on to the next slide as well. Okay, so the next slide is how to reconcile using Xero. So I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second whilst I prepare whilst I get that other slide ready. So if you just bear with me for 2 minutes, and like I said, if you have any questions, this is the perfect time to let me know. Thank you. Has everyone had a good day so far? Hi there, I'm back. Thank you. Thank you guys for waiting. So can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. And so on my screen, so this is the Xero dashboard. Our trade management company is just it's essentially just a dummy account that I had set up in Xero as well. And so just on the dashboard, this is what it would look like once we have actually integrated into Xero. This is the dashboard that you will actually see. And so I'm just going to go into the account to show you what the reconciliation process would actually then look like. So just bear with me 1 second, please. Okay. So when you're in the dashboard in Xero, you will see your organization name here once you have been integrated. And you'll also then see just the account balance here and the invoices owed to you and things of that nature as well. You can also go into contacts. This is where you will see things like contacts within your system, within your contacts, just so things like people like contractors, tenants, and even property owners, they will all be in here as well. And if I was to click into any one of them, you could then see how much they paid, and also how much they owe as well. So for example, as you can see, this customer here, James Blake, is a tenant, and when I go into his contact page, I can actually see the different invoices generated, and also the fact that they also do then need to be paid as well. And this has all been picked up from the Auth integration as well. I'm just waiting for this to clear just so that I can show you what that actually looks like as well. So I'm just getting one of my colleagues to open up the account again. It's been a while since I'd been on it. But in the meantime, I can show you what the reconciliation looks like as well. And so, like I said, when it's time to reconcile, and when it's time to reconcile the payment, you'll see on the left-hand side is where the back statement comes, is basically where the bank statement comes from. When you set up your Xero, you actually would set it up just so that Xero has a bank feed, just so that whenever a payment is made in your bank, so whether that's money either received or sent out, um that is shown on the bank feed here, and also such you can also see where it says spent and received. Once that payment is there, and once on the right hand side, this is where the invoices from Arthur are then posted as well. So once there is an invoice from Arthur, and there's a payment from your bank feed, Xero would automatically try to match them for you. It will look at things like dates, but most importantly, it would actually look at the amount spent and the either the amount spent or received to actually try and match those up. And so Xero has suggested that I match up this rent payment here with this rent invoice here as well. And so once I click OK, it would then basically confirm that match, and it's no longer needed to be reconciled. Once I do that, I will then see the statement balance and the balance in my Xero account move either up or down, depending on how the payments have been set up. And so once that's done, and then let's say I match this one as well, you can basically then see how the reconciliations have basically then gone, and I can then see them all in account transactions and bank statements and basically things of that nature as well. And so I'm not able to show you on this account, but I'll show you what the Xero screen looks like, and I'll show you what the mapping screen looks like as well, just because that is quite important. So we go into here. Sorry, give me 1 second. So I'm just going to pause sharing for a second. But did everyone follow so far? I can see a hand up. Give me 1 second. Okay, so edit. How can we get the direct bank feed on Xero? So so when you're in Xero, you'll actually I'll go to a dashboard. And so when you're in Xero, you can then add your bank accounts here. And when you actually then map from when you map from Arthur to Xero, you actually do map your bank accounts onto Xero as well. So once I can get that page open, it will make a lot more sense. I will be able to actually show you that as well. Just give me 1 second there. Any other questions? None? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to show you the Xero mapping screen as well. This is another one of our dummy accounts. And so this is the Xero mapping and setup screen essentially. And so these are the different sections that need to be mapped to Xero for the setup to be complete. And this is what we help you do with either the clean or basic integration. And so the first thing we map is the account codes and chart of accounts. If I go into this, these are essentially the different transactions and where they map onto Xero as well. So for example, a bespoke management fee is mapped onto a seller account in Xero, and this is where we select the accounts to set up to as well. And so if you're using a clean integration, we would essentially be able to make new accounts in Xero without having to check too many things going on, just because Xero will automatically pick up any chart of accounts that are in Arthur. If it is an existing integration, we would then make sure that the accounts in Xero have basically been set up properly, and we then match the Arthur account, which is on the left hand side here, to the Xero account here. So for example, cleaning is seen as an overhead, and there is also now a cleaning account in Xero as well, which is what it's been mapped to. And so once those mappings are complete, we essentially then move on from that and move on to mapping the bank accounts. And so there was a question earlier which said how can we get the direct bank feed on Xero? What happens is basically that with the integration, the bank account is basically essentially made in Arthur. And this is a good example where this account, the DPS control account, it already exists in Arthur, but then it has been mapped to Xero. Once you complete the mapping and save that mapping, you will then be able to see that mapping in Xero as well. I'm just trying to get the other account sorted out at first, just so that I can log into that. So just please bear with me, so I can show you kind of a live example of that. And then I'm just continuing on with the same sort of thinking. You can then map on the contacts, whether they're contractors, property owners, or tenants. You map them in the same way. You can also map the tenancies, the units as well. But then these two are more likely to be created in Xero from a clean integration, even if it's from a clean integration. If there is an existing integration, we have to go into Xero to actually then make these tracking units, as I said. And so the final thing we would then have to map is then basically map the tax rates as well. There are the default tax rates, which Arthur maps to Xero, but then there's also the custom tax rates as well, which you can add in Arthur and also in Xero as well. And so once the mappings are all complete, you would then go back to basically synchronize as well. And once you run the synchronization with Xero, it's basically making sure that any information that is on Arthur or Xero that hasn't been shared between the two systems, is then basically then shared. And okay, and Ed, I see your question about the synchronization. How can it be done automatically? When you set up Xero, you can also set up just so that there is a synchronization run every day at a certain time. So for example, on this account, you can see that this has been set to run every day at 6 a.m. And so it's telling me that the next and it's then telling me that the next sync will run at 6 a.m. And the way that you do this is you basically manage the synchronization within the settings as well. And so once you save those settings, you would then be able to run it every day. I'm just going to find the yeah, and you basically then do that in the configuration. And so yeah, you can then see that the sync now repeats every day at the time saved. And so just bear with me. I'm just going to go back into the other page as well. Any other questions? Okay, thank you guys for waiting. So I'll sort that out now, so I can actually then show you what a live look of that looks like as well. So as you can see, this is the Archer Management Company, which I've set up here as well, and I've connected it to Xero. So when I go to the mapping account codes, these are all the accounts that I had set up as well, and these are visible in Xero. If I was to go into the settings here, and the settings would be in the advanced settings. And yeah, so for example, the chart of accounts would be there, and then tracking categories would be here as well. And so like I was saying, the chart of accounts, you can edit that in Xero as well, just to make sure it matches up with basically what you have in Arthur. And this is where you can kind of make sure that any sort of custom charges, for example, whether you might have a management fee that is specific for a certain property owner, you would then make sure that you add that into Xero here, and you can do that just by adding account, and you fill in the details. Similarly, you can also add bank accounts in Xero as well, just so that whatever you need to match up into Arthur is also matched up in Xero as well. And so these are just the different accounts you can add in Xero, and And then also similarly, tracking categories are relevant more so when we are mapping units and tenancies as well. And so if you can see here, you can see that I have added a tracking category for units, and there's also a tracking category for properties as well. You can also add categories in as well for basically anything else, but then the way that we have set it up, that wouldn't necessarily be needed. We would only really need the tracking codes for the units and the properties as well. And similarly, tax codes you would also be able to manage within Xero as well, just so that if you need to have a custom tax rate to basically map back into Arthur, you would then add it into here and map it back into Xero as well. And so that's pretty much covered the basics of the Xero integration, and also the process and the mappings as well, and also how to reconcile. And I think the last question really is basically who can use the Xero integration versus who can't. And like I said, it's not necessarily a question of who can versus who can't use it. It basically just means that different users will have different levels of ease, basically, in terms of actually using the system as well. And so just to kind of give us a breakdown of that, if you are a self-managing landlord, to basically use the Xero, if you're a self-managing landlord, using the Xero integration with Arthur is actually a lot simpler than if you were a property manager who had third-party clients. The reason for that being that as a self-managing landlord, you don't have to necessarily separate client money from your, you necessarily have to separate client money from your own sort of business expenses. And so if you have just the one bank account, you can very easily integrate that into Xero and basically just do your reconciliations for both your client expenses and also rents and things of that nature. You can basically do all that in Xero. If you're a property manager, you can still use Xero the exact same way. The only difference is that because you need to have the money separated, you would then need to have multiple bank accounts in the Xero account as well. Just making sure that you reconcile make sure that you reconcile charges and things that are for clients, for tenants within the right bank account, and reconciling any sort of business expenses within that business account as well. But apart from that, both self-managing landlords as well as property managers, they can use the Xero integration quite easily. And so I'm just going to see if there's another question. I can't see any more questions, and that brings me really to the end of the webinar. Is there anything anyone would like to ask? Anything that wasn't explained so clearly? Any questions that you have lingering? This is the perfect time to ask, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if there is anything that you feel wasn't explained as well as you would like, please feel free to ask me now. This is my first time doing it, so I know that it might not have been perfect, but I will do my best to answer any questions to make sure that you go away with a good understanding of what the Xero integration is and how that and also how it can benefit you as well. So with that said, does anyone have any questions at the moment? Okay, cool. So, Karen, how does the VAT work for managing agents? Did you mean sorry, could you expand on that a bit? And like I said, feel free to kind of come into the question to ask and also unmute yourself. Yeah, so for example, Nicodemus, if you wanted to ask something, feel free to unmute yourself as well. I've allowed both of you to talk in the chat.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, that's perfect.
Oh, right. Yeah. So basically, if you're a managing agent and so you're obviously raising charges in Arthur on behalf of your clients who are VAT opted, where do these invoices? How are the invoices to the tenants? Would they be generated? Presumably, you'd have to raise them.
So that is on a separate system, just because the VAT will be included within the Arthur charges, and this is more so for if you're charging VAT to a client, the VAT will be included on the transaction itself, and you won't have to you don't have to declare it any differently. It can still be, the payment can still be reconciled in full. If it then comes to how to actually then report VAT for tax purposes. I have to be honest, I'm not totally familiar with that part of it. So I'd have to either ask another colleague or maybe I'm misunderstanding
Yeah,
the
it's
question.
just obviously because Arthur generates the managing agent's fee as well, the management fee.
Yes.
But then if the managing agent is opted to the tax, then obviously where does this fee get raised from? Would that get raised through Xero? But then it looks like the management fee is mapped to the income of the managing agent. So I just don't understand how the VAT would be dealt with on raising actual VATable invoices.
So are you familiar with using Arthur to raise invoices? So the reason I asked that is
no,
just
no. Are Arthur VATable invoices?
yeah. So I'll show you an example of that if you give me 1 second.
Okay.
In terms of how we run the invoices with that. Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to share the screen again. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So so this is a property owner statement, and this is where the management fee will come through. Now, the reason why I say that they're all calculated as part of the same fee is essentially that if I was to go into it, you would then see that the VAT code. So on this one, I put it as basically not applicable. But if I was to edit the transaction, you actually maybe not so much in this part because I set up already. But if there was a VAT code there, the VAT will be calculated as part of that management fee itself.
Can
So
you just click
after
back on it again for me? Sorry,
Yeah.
so I can have a proper look at it.
Yeah. So if you go into a transaction, you can see that there is space for a VAT code there. I've set it to basically not applicable. So in my example,
But it just says paid by property owner. It doesn't actually say who the invoice is to and who it's from. It doesn't look like a VAT invoice. If you was asked to provide a copy
that would
to
be
somebody.
that'd be something different. That would actually be in a statement as well. So if I was to print the statement or to actually print the report, you would then see what that does look like. So I'm just gonna give an example of that. Yep. So this is a printable property owner statement. I haven't done the. If I was to change the dates. Yep. So this is what the actual invoice would look like, and you can see there is a space for basically the VAT as well.
Yeah, but that's a statement showing receipts and payments for the landlord. It isn't an actual VAT invoice, is it?
No, we don't generate VAT invoices as far as
that's what I was saying. So where would if you was a managing agent and you were registered for VAT, where would you issue your VAT invoices? Would that be through Xero?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think I can ask the rest of the team that, but I haven't seen that before. I haven't come across that before.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll feel free to kind of get in touch with us either through the live chat if you want to ask that question as well, and yeah, one of us will know the answer to that and be able to answer you there.
Okay.
I'll ask as well just so that I can know that for myself. Any other questions? If you have any, like I said, you don't have to necessarily post them in the chat. You can feel free to just unmute yourself and start talking. No more questions? Lindsay, did you have a question?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, good, because I was struggling to be heard. I just have a question regarding housing benefits, because we've already integrated, have the Arthur and Xero integration.
Yep.
And we have like every couple of weeks, we get couple of thousand, 10, 15,000 from housing benefit.
Yep.
I've been posting them in Xero, but I've noticed those payments have not been uploaded to Arthur. When we get individual rent payments in from individual tenants, it's fine, the feed is okay. But when I have these bulk payments from the, housing benefit, it doesn't seem to be feeding through. So I don't know if there's something I should be doing in Xero or something I should be doing in Arthur to make sure that they're reflected in their rent accounts.
Anything, so when you say it's not feeding through, is it not coming through the bank feed on Xero at all?
No, it's coming through in Xero, okay.
Okay.
It's just that when I do the payment in Xero, it's not then going to Arthur.
Back to Arthur.
Because I wouldn't expect to have to do anything in Arthur, I just expect to see it there.
That basically sounds as if the chart of accounts and the mappings, they haven't been set up correctly. Because the way that the relationship works is that whatever information is shared between the two systems, if it's something like a payment or basically a charge, it has to be mapped to a chart of accounts, and we also have to know the bank account that it's coming from, and also have a note of that in Arthur as well. So I wouldn't be able to answer that exactly now, but if you wanted to come into the live chat and I guess just present the case to us there, we'd then be able to actually look into your Xero account, look into the Arthur account to basically see if the mappings have been done correctly, because from the sounds of it, that sounds as if it is an issue with the mappings. Are you saying that the payments are coming through on Xero, but the charges themselves that you generate on Arthur, they're not showing on Xero? No,
the charges are showing. It's because
is it then that the receipts aren't coming back? It's the receipts
that aren't coming back to Arthur. If it's an individual receipt from Mrs. A, then Arthur can read Mrs. A.
Yeah.
Mrs. B, it reads Mrs. B and it updates their account. But if it's coming from, if it's a bulk payment from, say, Portsmouth City Council, it doesn't have a contact called Portsmouth City Council, but I don't post it to Portsmouth City Council. I post it to Mrs. XYZ, their various parts of it. And that's not what's feeding through. So I don't know if it's a problem with mapping.
I think we'd have to look at that a bit closer, just because it sounds, the housing benefit setups are usually a bit more complex as well. We tend to have to do the mappings a little bit differently, just so that everything shows up, because I understand that you're essentially getting the payment from the council, but that payment then needs to be reconciled to multiple different tenants, and it might not even be the full payment that is going to the different tenants.
Absolutely.
So I don't have the exact answer for that right now. I can only say intuitively, I do understand that the setups and the mappings probably would need to be a little bit different as well. So I think one of my senior colleagues, if you come into the chat or basically send us an email, we'd then be able to...
Okay, I'll send you an email. I'll send you guys an email.
Better. Yeah.
Okay, because we have a contact in Arthur that we talked to anyway, but I thought I'd come online. I'll send an email. All right, great. Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else? Any final questions? If no one has any more questions, then I think we'll end the webinar here. Thank you guys again for coming to the webinar. Feel free to leave any feedback as well. I personally would like to hear what has gone well, what hasn't gone well, just so that this goes better next time. And I really do hope that you all found this useful. And any questions you do have as well, feel free to let us know either via email or basically to come in into our live chat as well. But thank you for coming to the webinar today. My name is Shibomi, and thank you for coming to the Xero integration and who should be using the webinar. I hope you all have a lovely day.